Welcome to the Dynon channel, your video source for information, education, and training on Dynon Avionics' industry-leading line of integrated avionics for experimental amateur-built and light sport aircraft. Today's topic, SkyView System, Map NRST feature.
In this video, I'd like to start a series of short videos covering the various map functions in the SkyView system. Now, SkyView has an integrated VFR GPS navigator. The first manifestation you see on the screen is the moving map itself, and there's a whole bunch of information available on the screen. I'll try and cover some of that in a separate video. Today, I want to focus on one of the common functions you see in all GPS navigators, and that is the nearest item or menu. Now, first of all, we're here on SkyView's main menu, button 1 labeled PFD. Notice that button 3 is labeled Map, and that gives us access to all the various functions associated with the map, including navigation functions and so on. I'm going to press that now. So here's a menu you need to become very familiar with. Buttons 2 through 7 give us access to the various map information and navigation functions. For this video, we're going to focus on the nearest list, and that's accessed on button 3, labeled NRST, nearest. So what happens when I press that button? Well, it's quite intuitive. You can imagine it brings up a list. In this case, I'm looking at a list of airports, and that list contains the 20 closest airports to my current position. Now let me exit from this list for a moment, pressing button 1, exit. If you notice on my display here, it's kind of hard to see because there's a traffic symbol, but as I zoom way in, underneath this traffic symbol, you can see that I'm at Kilo Papa Alpha Echo. That's KPAE, or Painfield, my home airport. And there's my aircraft symbol indicating I'm parked on the ramp somewhere in the middle of the airport. So I'll scroll back in. Now, since I'm located on that airport, you can expect that that airport should be the very closest one in my nearest list. I'll go back to that button 3, nearest. And then, yes, of course, here I am at Snohomish County Airport, Painfield, KPAE. And as I rotate my knob, I can scroll up and down this list and see the various airports nearby. Now, notice across the top of the screen, this is a common way that SkyView works throughout many screens, and there are multiple tabs across the top, sort of like the tabs on the top of file folders. And there's a blue cursor highlighting the first tab that says APT. Of course, that stands for airport. I call that a secondary cursor. You already saw me move the primary cursor up and down by rotating the knob. The method for moving the secondary cursor to the left and right across those tabs is to use the knob like a joystick. So I'll do that now. I'll click the knob to the right. Next, we come to a tab labeled WX. That stands for weather. In this aircraft, we have an ADS-B receiver installed, so we're getting ADS-B weather information. So we have a tab dedicated to the nearest airports that are reporting weather via the ADS-B system. Many of the same airports that were in my airport list. The next tab says VOR. If I click my knob to the right, you'll see here we have a list of the nearest VORs. And so on, NDBs, GPS fixes. VRP stands for Visual Reporting Points. Those aren't very commonly used in the US, but they're very common in Europe. The next tab shows me the nearest user-defined waypoints. These are waypoints that users of this aircraft have defined at various times. I'll cover how to create user waypoints in another video. The next tab says ATC. These are the nearest various ATC facilities, their distance and bearing and so on, and their frequency. And then finally, the nearest FSS, flight service stations. So that's a quick rundown of all the items on the nearest list. Now, notice on my menu system, with the nearest list displayed, button 3 is labeled Filter. And notice how that button is gray. You've seen this before in the SkyView system. Anytime a menu button is gray, that denotes an on-off feature, and gray is the on condition. So that tells me that this filter, whatever it is currently turned on. I'm going to turn that filter off for a moment, and hopefully you saw that my list changed quickly. I'm going to toggle that on and off again for a moment. Filter on, and filter off. As I do that, the nearest list changes. What does that mean? Well, the SkyView system allows you to define some filter criteria so that you can quickly remove airports, for example, from your list. A good example is if you fly a high-performance airplane with retractable gear, you may not want to land on dirt runways. If you're not flying a float plane, you probably don't need to see water runways, float plane bases, and so on. And anytime we turn the filter on, it applies the predefined filter criteria to remove those airports from display. Another common filter element is runway length. If you want, in an emergency situation, you might want to go to runways no shorter than 3,000 feet, for example. So to understand how that filter works, we have to go to the location where we can edit that. So I'm going to back out of this menu, pressing button 1, exit. Now on the button 7 now says Map Menu. This gives me a submenu of various controls for how the map works. As I look down this list, I want to focus on the one that says Nearest List Options. So let's look at that. I'll highlight that, and the caret says I must click the knob to the right to choose that list. Here are my filter criteria for when I'm looking at the list of nearest airports. First of all, do I want to show the full airport name? Yes, I like that. Now, when filtered, do I want to see runway surfaces that are hard surface only? Or if I click to the right, I can see I have choices: any surface, water only, hard and soft, or hard only. So let's assume again that I have a relatively high performance airplane and I need 3,000 feet to land, and I probably only want to land on hard runways. I'm going to accept this option, hard only. Notice the second option says private airports. Currently they're not shown when I have my list filtered. If I did want to see those, I could highlight shown on this menu. But again, private airports, many times they're relatively short. Oftentimes they're unpaved. If I'm using my filter as an emergency list, I'm going to filter those out by saying not shown. So I'll accept that option. And then finally, we come to minimum runway length. Notice currently it's set to 2,000 feet. I'll click the knob to the right. Here's where I could adjust the minimum length of runways I want to see when I apply that filter. In my example, I said I don't want to look at runways any shorter than 3,000 feet. That's pretty long by my standards, but let's put that in for now. And I'll accept. So now, again, reviewing my filter criteria, when the filter is turned on, I will see only those airports with hard surfaces. I won't see any private airports, and I'll see airports that have a minimum runway length of 3,000 feet. Pressing the exit button, let's go back and look at the nearest list one more time. Pressing the nearest button. Here's my list of nearest airports. Currently my filter is off. When I press that button again, the filter is applied, and you see the list changes. So turning the filter off, you can see that my very closest airport is Jim Julie's, but that's a private airport indicated by the symbol R. And so when I filter, you can see that all of the private airports are removed from my list. I now want to show you how the nearest list function changes depending on the state of your map. The normal state of the map is that we show our aircraft position with a little aircraft icon, and the nearest list is referenced to my own position, and that's what we see here. Again, my aircraft is located on the Painfield Airport, showing the nearest list. Painfield is at the top of my list. However, what happens when I'm in the panning mode? I'm going to zoom my map out a little bit, and now I'm going to pan the cursor down towards what I know to be the Seattle SeaTac Airport area. So here we're in the vicinity of SeaTac Airport. I've even selected the airspace around SeaTac, but notice what happens now when I press the nearest list. Pressing button 3, nearest. I still see a list of the nearest airports, but notice Painfield is no longer at the top. I now see Kilo Sierra Echo Alpha. That's SeaTac Airport. The reason for that is that when the map is in the panning mode, meaning I've moved off my current position, then we change the nearest list to be indexed to the location of the cursor. The rationale is you're exploring elsewhere on the map, and so you're interested in airports nearest the cursor location. I talked previously about the filter. Currently that filter is turned on. If I turn that off, the map changes, or the list changes a little bit. Now, when I exit from this screen, we return to the map and we have the flashing cursor that again denotes I'm in the panning mode. If I press the center of the knob to exit panning mode, I return to my own position as reference, and looking again at the nearest list, we see that it's now indexed at my current position. So that's another example of how to use the nearest list. You have your choice of looking nearest your own position or nearest the cursor position when you're panning on the map. So there you have it. That's a quick rundown of how the nearest feature works. It's one of the most useful aspects of SkyView's Moving Map and VFR GPS Navigator. In another video, I'll show you how to access the information about each airport by using the info button. Thanks for joining.
For more information on planning or capabilities of the SkyView system, please see our website at dynonavionics.com, where you can find links to our system installation guides, pilot user guides, and other valuable information like our user forum. Thank you for watching the Dynon channel.